industry experts, and influencers share with you the best strategies to pay down debt, which at America Saves, we know that paying down debt is saving. We thank you for joining us and invite you to engage with us, share comments, ask questions, and most importantly, get the support you need to take action towards your own financial well-being.
Thanks so much for joining us for How to Pay Down Debt. I'm Amelia O'Rourke-Owens, Director of Youth Financial Capability at America Saves. Before we dive in, I wanted to frame a few things for you today. First, we know why you're here. Since the coronavirus pandemic, we have heard from our savers. Some of you are struggling. Some of you are doing okay, but realize you need to get a better hold of your finances and be better prepared for the future. And some of you are even doing better than before the coronavirus. And because of that, it's time to make goals around your increased income. As an organization, it is our mission and commitment to meet people exactly where they are and provide a realistic, practical approach to savings. So that's what we're doing today. 3 things I need you to know. 1, you're going to get concrete tools that are going to help you and be easy to implement. 2, you're going to have the opportunity to be one of 5 winners to get $500 in cash to jumpstart your emergency savings or to pay down debt. To be eligible, you need to do 2 things within 24 hours of this town hall. First, you're going to need to share your top takeaway on the America Saves Facebook page live stream from today's event. You'll also want to be sure that you've taken the America Saves or Military Saves pledge within the last 12 months. Not sure? Go ahead and repledge and make a savings goal for yourself. The third thing I need you to know is that you'll have access to free financial coaching or counseling. It's important to us not just to provide you with information, but to set you up for great success. Thanks to our friends at AFCPE and Yellow Ribbon Network, you'll be able to have an accredited financial counselor or coach to help you get clarity around your finances so that you can feel empowered and confident about your financial well-being. As you participate with us today, we hope you walk away committed to setting a savings goal and making a financial plan for yourself and your family. The first step, taking the America Saves or Military Saves pledge.
I'm Jen Hemphill, an accredited financial counselor, money confidence coach, and host of the Her Dinero Matters podcast. In my line of work, I talk to everyday people just like you who are looking for financial security and a better relationship with their money. I get it. I've been there. I've been in the trenches with paying down debt. Think about it. When you're paying down your debt, you are saving on interest. You are saving on late fees. You are saving on your credit score because you are improving it along the way. Another thing, when paying down your debt, you're able to reach that financial security that you've been longing for faster, and you can put that extra savings into whatever you want versus having to focus on your daily obligations or living paycheck to paycheck. By taking the America Saves pledge, you can actually choose paying down your debt as a savings option. So go to the America Saves website and make the commitment to yourself to pay down your debt.
Well, I am so excited to chat with you all. Of course, I am Kia Young, Director of Communications here at America Saves. I'm joined by the amazing Robin Sachs-Frankel, personal finance expert at Forbes Advisor. We're going to chat all about how to pay down debt and prioritize debt today. So let me introduce you to my friend Robin. She is the personal finance expert at Forbes Advisor and has covered credit cards and credit and debt content at national web publications, including NerdWallet, Bankrate, Her Money. She's been featured as a money expert by outlets, including CNBC, Business Insider, and so many others. So I'm excited to chat with you today, Robin. One of our core beliefs at America Saves is that paying down debt is saving. Now, as someone who's had to pay off debt, you don't automatically think of paying out anything to someone as saving. So let's hear it from an expert, from you. to help frame it for our savers. How is paying down debt saving, and what are your own personal aha moments that you've had while paying down debt?
Sure. And thanks again for having me, Kia. It's a pleasure to be here. I think what a lot of people don't realize when it comes to debt is that all the money that you're paying towards interest payments, if you didn't have that debt to begin with, that could be money in your pocket or money towards something else. When you're taking out a loan, whether it's for a credit card to buy a big ticket item, an auto loan, a mortgage, what you're doing when you take out that loan and pay interest on it is you're paying for the privilege of paying something off over time. But paying interest on something over time ultimately makes it more expensive. If you buy something for $10,000 and you put it on a credit card with a 18% interest rate, in a year, that item, I know it's a big item, right? But in a year, that item is going to have cost you well over $10,000. So that's one way to think about debt versus savings. The more debt you have, the less you have to put towards savings.
Very, very true. And, here at America Saves, we recognize that everyone is in a different place financially, especially our savers, and especially with everyone still experiencing the effects from COVID. So I want to ask you, how should you go about paying off debt? But before you answer, let's frame it in a way that's similar to the financial scenarios that we're hearing from our savers, which are 3 categories. And for those of you listening in the chat, feel free to share which of those categories you find yourself in if you are feeling comfortable. So those 3 categories. One is that they have lost income, had savings, and they're using that savings to meet their living expenses. So they're spending down that savings. That second category is they have the same income that they had pre-COVID, but they didn't have a savings built up. So now they kind of have like a wake-up call moment of like, okay, I need to be better prepared and get serious about my savings. And then there's our third category, and for whatever reason, they've had an increase in income due to either the stimulus or a boost from extra unemployment, or maybe they have a business that's doing better, or they've added an additional stream of income to their household. So, Robin, let's start with group 1, that first category. They've lost income and had savings, but are currently spending it down. How do they go about paying down their debt right now? How should they think about that?
Sure. Unfortunately, if you've lost your job and you're living off your savings, paying down debt shouldn't be your priority. Savings is a finite amount of money, and you don't know how much longer you're going to be out of work. You don't know how long that's going to go on. You don't know if there's going to be another stimulus check coming your way if you got one even the first time around. What I would recommend to someone who's purely living off savings right now is try to make your expenses as minimal as possible. A lot of places that you may have a loan with offer different COVID relief programs. And by relief, I mean their deferment, or they'll allow you to delay your payments. They might reduce some of your payments. I recommend contacting everyone who you have a loan with, like your credit cards, your auto loans, your mortgage, your landlord, any student loans. And a lot of them will allow you to do what's called deferment. And I do have to add that when it comes to deferment, that doesn't mean you can just put it on pause, all your payments, and deal with it later, and it will just pick up and resume. Oftentimes, what deferment means is they might give you 6 months to hold off on making payments, but then at the end of that 6 months, you'll owe for that entire 6 months, plus you'll have to start making payments again. Now, not everybody does this. There are some deferred payment plans available in this time of the pandemic where you're going to get a reduced amount, or maybe for a mortgage, they'll put those payments at the end of like your 20 or 30-year mortgage. So it's important to know what your options are and to make sure you make a good choice, not one that's going to come back and to smack you in 6 months.
Oh yeah, that could be quite the wake-up call of thinking that you've had this time to kind of figure things out, and then all of a sudden you have 6 or 7 months of mortgage payments to do at once. So very great tip. Thanks for sharing that so our savers can be aware. So that second group, right? That second group who, their income has stayed the same and they realize that they need to do a better job of savings because they didn't have a lot of savings built up when the COVID hit. What would you say to them when it comes to paying down their debt right now?
Sure, absolutely. If you're lucky enough to still have your job and your expenses remain pretty static, it's still probable that you aren't spending money the same way you were before. I mean, everybody's lifestyle and habits are different, but most of the things that people were doing for entertainment or spending their disposable income on, like maybe going to a concert or a sporting event or a movie or going out to eat or buying lots of clothes. A lot of people have really cut back on those things because there's simply nowhere to be wearing the new clothes, and there aren't as many things to go out and do like there used to be. I recommend taking that money and putting that as your savings. Think about if you had a budget for clothing or you had a budget to go out and eat. Consider that your savings bucket for now, and that's certainly a great way to build up a stash of savings without really changing much about your everyday life.
I can say that I really do miss concerts and live music right now. I think of all
We all
the
do.
things that have changed. That is one that I miss a lot. Okay, let's talk about that third category, Robin. So they have had an increase or a boost in income since COVID. How should they approach, paying off their debt or paying down their debt right now with this new extra income that they have?
Sure. And congratulations if you are able to find a way to either pull off a side hustle or if your business has improved. That's a wonderful thing, especially during these times. And if you were able to do so, assuming that you were able to already meet all your basic living expenses, it would be amazing if you could take that extra or supplementary income and apply it towards paying down your debt. Because as I mentioned earlier, carrying any kind of debt at all is just so incredibly expensive. There's just almost no benefit to it over the long term. So anything you can do to reduce your debt load is going to benefit you, both in the short term and the long term.
Love that. So now that we know how to approach or how to think about our debt, we're thinking like savers, right?
Mm-hmm.
From that high level view, what about those nitty gritty details? Sorry, I can't talk. How do you decide what to pay off first or what's most important when it comes to prioritizing debt?
Sure. Generally, what I would tell most people is look at what your most expensive debt is. And by that, I mean, what debt are you paying the most interest on? Because that's the debt that's costing you the most to carry. And that's the debt you want to pay off as soon as possible. That's generally the way to go. Obviously, most people who are adults and live in homes and drive cars and maybe went to college have a lot of different types of debt. Some folks prefer what's called the debt snowball method, where they pay off the smallest debt first because it gives them a psychological boost. If that feels more appealing to you than your most expensive debt, have at it, whatever it takes to help get you on the right track towards paying down debt. But from a cost perspective, financially, it makes the most sense to attack that high interest debt first.
Really, really smart. One of the things that our on staff AFC Lila says all the time too, when you're looking at those interest rates and checking to see what to pay off first, is to research if they have any prepayment penalties, right? Could you talk a little bit about what prepayment penalties are? Because it's possible that people can have credit cards right now and not realize that they could be penalized for paying it off early.
Right, sure. Any loan you take, and you might see this with certain types of mortgages, in particular, a prepayment penalty, you could actually have a charge levied against you if you try to pay off all your entire debt at once. And often it's a percentage of the amount of debt you still owe. And that's because that's how lenders make money, is by you paying interest. So they lose out if you pay off your debt sooner. So you absolutely want to check in the terms and conditions of any loan, or just call up the lender and just say, is there a prepayment penalty? They have to tell you. It's not a secret, and it just might not be something you were aware of.
Right. Yeah, that's a really, really good tip, to just call them and get the information straight from them instead of trying to decipher all the fine print. So, okay, Robin, tell us, what are your go-to tools or resources for savers that you suggest to help them pay off their debt, or anything that that's specific to COVID right now?
Well, one of the things that has happened since the onset of the pandemic is that you used to only be able to check your credit report for free once a year through annualcreditreport.com. And now you can actually check it once a week through the end of April 2021. And I say to anybody who has been struggling with trying to shift around their debt or has maybe taken on a deferment, it's very important to check your credit report, because even if you think you've worked out a deferment plan with one of your lenders, it's possible that they are accidentally or crossing paths reporting you as not paying or paying late. And what you don't want to have happen is for you to have worked out a plan that's within your budget, but then you're getting penalized by your credit score dropping because the lender is reporting you as paying late. And unfortunately, that sort of thing happens more often than you'd expect. I mean, most people aren't checking their credit reports every week or even every year. So that's a free and pretty easy resource. I highly recommend that people take a look at it.
I like that. One of the things that I do personally is I've Credit Karma sends me an email each week with with what my updates are. That helps me to kind of remember to go and check to see what's happening too. So that's two things for them. And then another thing that Lila tells us about all the time she raves about is PowerPay. PowerPay is a free tool created by the Utah State University Extension. And it basically is a debt calculator for you. She loves it. Lila loves it because one, it's free. But if you're a visual person, it's really helpful because you can switch it around and show different scenarios. So a little bit later today, we're going to take you through that tool just so you can kind of visually see the best way to pay down your debt. But we definitely wanted to mention that as a really great resource for our savers. Now, Robin, to wrap this all up, I wanted to get some advice from you as an expert. As you know, everyone who watches this town hall between now and March 2021, they'll be able to get free coaching and free financial coaching and counseling from the Yellow Ribbon Network and our friends at AFCPE. We know that money is one of those very taboo topics, right? No one likes to talk about it. And if you aren't in a great place financially, there could be some shame or guilt around letting someone else see where you are with your money. So what advice would you give to someone who's thinking they should pass over this very free, no obligation, you won't be sold anything on the back end, this opportunity to have a professional look at your financial situation and help you to make a plan to get in a better place? What would you say to them right now?
I would say to them to run towards that free advice. You have absolutely nothing to lose. This is an unbiased individual who has no judgment. I'm assuming, nothing to gain. Why not get advice? I'd rather get advice from an unbiased professional than ask a friend about money. And yet we all ask our friends for parenting advice or, how does this outfit make me look? And those are things that are a lot more personal, I think, than asking someone about black and white numbers. So
and you
go
never
get
have
that
to
advice.
Right. And you never have to see them again if you don't want to, or you could become BFFs because they help you so much. Who knows? But if you don't want to see them again, you don't have to after you finish with your plan. So that's always nice and really great advice. Run towards that opportunity. Well, Robin, I couldn't have said that better. And I just want to thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I know Forbes Advisor has a ton of resources that we'll link for our savers, all about how to pay down their debt, how to pay off their debt. Can't thank you enough for giving such great advice and sharing your resources with our saver community. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Kia.
Of course.
Good afternoon, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Amelia?
I'm doing well, thanks. So for our savers at home, joining us today is Tom Quinn, Vice President of Scores at FICO. Thanks for joining us today, Tom.
Looking forward to it.
Before we get into specifics, could you just give us a brief and basic understanding of what our credit score is, how they work, and what they impact?
Sure. So a credit score, a FICO score, is a 3-digit number that ranges from 300 to 850, where higher is equated to a more favorable score. And lenders use this score to help them in their credit evaluation process determine if they're going to extend credit or not. And the FICO score is based on information in the credit report. And the way it works is it's rather simple. It's asking several questions about your credit information and getting an answer and then assigning a point. And this would be very similar to if you got a call today from your brother or family friend saying, hey, can you lend me $100 today? So you're going to ask some questions in your mind before doing that. And the score is basically doing the same thing, but from a statistical perspective. And the score is based on 5 broad categories in the credit report. And the first category is called payment history. And payment history is obviously very important. It's looking at the history of how you paid your bills in the past. And so if it sees delinquency information or missed payment information, it's going to look at it in several different ways. It's going to look at it in terms of how severe it was. Was it a one-time late, or did you go to charge off, for example? It's going to look at the frequency. So was it a one-time missed payment that I'll get my bill, or is there a pattern there of multiple missed payments? And then it's going to look at the recency of it. Did it happen last month or did it happen 5 years ago? So the more recent, the more severe, and the more frequent, the harder the hit's going to be on the score. The second broad category of information we look at is what we call outstanding debt. So these are the balances that you're carrying on your various types of credit in the credit file. And we look at it in terms of total number of balances, we look at it on balances on specific types of accounts, and most importantly, we look at it in terms of your available credit, how much is being used. So if you have a credit card with a $1,000 line and you have a $500 balance, that shows you're 50% utilized. And the greater your utilization percentage on your credit, the riskier the profile into those points. The last three categories are length of credit history. So here we are looking at how established your credit profiles are in terms of how long you've had credit from your age of owner's trade to kind of your average time on file across all your different credit obligations. And again, the longer your credit history, the more positive that translates into the score. And then pursuit of credit, here we're looking at, are you out there seeking a lot of new credit? So inquiries and opening of new accounts being reported. And the data shows that the more new pursuit of new credit, the riskier the patterns and the points will accommodate for that. And then the last section is what we call credit mix, which is just looking at, what are the types of credit that you're using in your credit profile. So, 5 main categories, all important, but you can see that the payment history and the outstanding debt is really what's driving your score. It's about 65% of the score. So that's where I always encourage consumers to focus on, paying bills on time and keeping your debt levels low. I can't hear you.
Thanks, Tom. I was thanking you for sharing that with us and breaking down those categories. Robin gave us some information earlier today on saving by paying down debt. And we learned a lot about comparing interest rates, researching prepayment penalties, and things like that. But if only things were that simple. Could you talk to us about paying down debt and credit score and how that may be a different analysis than just looking at saving money by paying down debt on the highest interest balances that you have?
Sure. So, the positive news here is that regardless of your objective in terms of how you're prioritizing your debt reduction strategy, that the reduction of that debt is going to have a positive impact on your score as it's reported to the credit reporting agency. From a score perspective, it's a little bit different. And one of the main reasons is that your interest rate you're being charged is not reported typically to the credit reporting agencies, Equifax, TU, TransUnion, and Experian. So there's no way to know when the score is looking at your credit card to ABC Bank versus XYZ Bank that the interest is higher on one card or the other. So from a credit score perspective, we know there's differences in the way the model looks at different types of credit. So there's basically 2 types. There's installment credit. That would be like an automobile loan, a mortgage, or a student loan. And revolving credit, which would be your Visa, MasterCard, or department store cards. And generally speaking, the model puts more weight on how you manage your revolving credit than your installment credit. So if you, for example, this month get into some extra money and you want to reduce your debt and you're trying to figure out, should I focus here or should I focus here? From a FICO score perspective, applying the funds to the reduction of debt on the revolving trade is going to have a bigger impact than on the installment obligations.
So sometimes so it's always good to pay down debt is the takeaway for everybody here today. But sometimes we might want to save money right now by paying down the balance with the highest interest rates. But if our priority, it sounds like, is improving our credit score, then what I heard you say is that actually we might be incentivized to pay down a different loan first. Is that right?
So yeah, with credit cards, the way to think about that is if you have multiple credit cards with multiple balances and different balances, and the APRs or the interest rates are different. From a credit score perspective, it's going to be more advantageous to take an approach where you pay down your lowest balance cards first, and they may have higher interest rates. So that's a little bit in confluence with the information Robin provided. But the way the score is looking at it, it would then allow the user to get incremental points for having less credit cards with balances and less credit cards with high utilization ratios. So from a score perspective, focusing in on those low balance cards first, get them down to 0, and then focus on the higher balance cards to reduce your revolving debt, and get that to low values will have a really super high impact result on your FICO scores.
So when we are acknowledging that folks save money by paying down debt, how exactly does improving my credit score save me money?
Right, so having a higher score is really important in our economic world. And the US is a very credit hungry population. We use a lot of credit for payment of goods and services, and it has impactful impacts on your ability to save money. So having a higher score can result in, for example, having less down payments to make, a lower down payment or a lower deposit. It can be the elimination of fees, for example, on a credit obligation. It can result in having higher lines assigned to you when you're applying for credit. And it also has effects on the interest rate. So there's a lot of tangible areas where having that higher FICO score actually saves you money. And here we have a loan calculator where we will look at the potential benefits of a higher FICO score for a automobile loan. Let's say you're going out to get a $20,000 automobile, and you're looking for a 4-year term on that loan. And let's say that your current score is around 650. So 650 is not a horrible score, but it's not a great score. And let's say that you, so at the 650 range, you can see that the interest rate that you're paying would be around 10.5%, and your monthly payment would be around $512. And over the life of the loan, you're paying about $4,500 in interest fees. So then let's say that you were able to get your score from 650 up to 690, so that would be at the second tier. Now you can see that with that higher FICO score, the lender is providing a lower interest rate, so it gets cut in half basically because you're lower risk. And therefore you see that your monthly payment drops by about $50, and your savings over the life of that loan, or your interest paid over the life of the loan, is lower, and it saves you about $2,300 in interest payments compared to if your score was 650. So this is a real life example of how having a higher FICO score by about 40 or 50 points could actually result in significant savings that you could use that money elsewhere versus paying it to the bank.
So if I want to save by paying down my debt to improve my credit score, so that's my priority, what should I be prioritizing there? And I know you hit on what makes up the credit score, but walk me through how exactly I could go about saving money by improving my credit score and what I should be prioritizing with that.
Sure. So the number one factor is pay all your bills on time, regardless if they're installment, mortgage, credit card, line of credit, whatever. Make that payment on time, because as I indicated before, a missed payment can have a huge impact on your score. So that's the number one thing in terms of sound strategy for improving your score. Then I would say if you have installment loans, just make the payment that's required. It's usually a fixed payment, every month. So just pay that $300 or $400, whatever it is each month. You don't need to pay any extra. And then if you have credit card with balances and you have multiple cards with balances, the strategy there would be to pay the low balances first. So you have fewer accounts with balances being reported to the Bureau, and you have fewer revolving accounts with high utilization. So you get more positive points for that behavior, and then you can focus in on those higher balance cards. Two kind of facts to know that I think are important for everyone to understand is, number one, do not close any of your credit cards. So if you're paying down the credit card and you have a zero balance, just put the card in your drawer, bureau drawer in your bedroom. Or if you don't have the discipline to not use it, cut it up and throw it away, but don't call the issuer and say, please close my account. There's no benefit to the score, and it actually could hurt your score for the scenario we talked about, having high utilization, because it takes that line away from the calculation. And then the second kind of helpful hint here is actually having a little bit of balance on your credit card when it's reported to the credit bureau is more advantageous than having zero revolving debt at all. And the reason for that is the data shows us that someone that has activity on a revolving trade and but it's low balance and low utilization is actually less risky than someone that has no credit balances at all on the credit card. So to clarify there, again, you want that small balance to be reported to the bureau. Don't revolve on your credit with the lender, because they'll start charging you interest on that. So it's only pertaining to house reported to the bureau.
Great. And then I do sometimes see ads for companies that claim that they help me reduce my debt. They'll do credit repair services. They always say that they're going to improve my score quickly. Are these legit? And should I consider using one of these?
Well, one thing that I was fortunate to be taught when I was growing up with my parents was, if it looks too good to be true, it usually is. So you don't want to get burned. So if you do see those banner ads pop up when you log in or on TV channels, just be really cautious. And I would say that make sure you do your investigation in terms of understanding what they're about and where they're coming from. But if they make claims that are really outlandishly, like we'll improve your score 100 points, etc., in one day, I would avoid that. And the other thing too is if they have any fees that are required up front, that's usually a sign of concern as well, because the legitimate nonprofits that play in this space typically do not charge a fee to help a consumer with debt management strategies. So again, the caution there is there's legitimate companies out there that can help you, but you really need to do the research and make sure that you're comfortable with a nonprofit that can help you in this space.
And to clarify, America Saves has done that research today, so we've teamed up with some great nonprofits to connect our savers to free financial counseling and coaching from accredited professionals. So those have been appropriately vetted, and they are charging no fees upfront or anywhere in the line. So just wanted to clarify that for our savers at home. Well, Tom, this has been really helpful. I feel like I understand a lot better what builds my credit score, what influences my credit score, and also that sometimes I may be doing a different analysis depending on how I want to save money by paying down debt. So I really appreciate you for joining us today, and to our savers at home, give a virtual round of applause for Tom Quinn, Vice President of Scores at FICO, and we'll turn it over to Akiva Thomas.
So hello, I am Kia Young, Director of Communications at America Saves, joined by Phil Goldfeder, Senior Vice President of Public Affairs at Cross River, who happens to be the sponsor for our Think Like a Saver sweepstakes, where savers can enter to win $500 cash to put toward their emergency savings or paying off their debt. Thanks so much for joining me today, Phil.
Thank you so much for having me, Kia. More importantly, thank you for all the tremendous work that America Saves does.
I appreciate that. We try very hard over here. So we're here talking about how to pay down your debt today and how paying down debt is saving. So I want you to kind of put yourself in the shoes of one of the winners of the sweepstakes. So they've just been contacted by America Saves and told that they've won $500 cash. What are 3 really useful tips that they should keep in mind once they receive their prize money?
So, first and foremost, make a plan. And I think it's so important, right? When you get sort of a windfall of money, or you win some sort of contest, or whatever happens in your lifetime, and all of a sudden you find yourself having money. Oftentimes, I think human nature is reactionary. It's like, ooh, what can I buy? What can I do? And so I think it's important to sort of take a moment, sort of think about what's about to come and how that can impact your life. Number two is think about saving. Again, I think human nature is, what can I buy? What can I spend? Think about savings. Think about, how I can make this money last, not just for a few days or a few weeks, but really help me secure my future. And then third, Kia, as you mentioned earlier, sometimes paying down debt is just as important as savings. Too often times we think about debt that is something that is something we can't overcome. And when you have money like this and you take that moment to think about how you're going to use it, potentially paying down debt might be the best idea for you. And so, again, we're happy to participate, Cross River is happy to provide the opportunity for people to have to make these kinds of decisions. These are the kinds of decisions you want to make is how do you plan for receiving $500? But I think it's so important that people take the time to do the right thing, not just for today, but for the future.
I love that. Such great suggestions, Phil. We can't thank Cross River enough for your support and investment into our savers and helping them to think like a saver. So thanks for sharing those 3 tips with us. And thanks again for all of your help. And we can't wait to chat with you soon.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much, Kia.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Moira. How are you?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for joining us. For our Savers at Home, this is Moira Vehi. She's with the Student Borrower Protection Center. She's the Director of Communications. Moira, we're so glad to have you talking to us about student loans today.
Thank you.
And tell us about your organization.
Sure. So the Student Borrower Protection Center, we're a national nonprofit focused on helping end the student debt crisis. We advocate for increased borrower rights and protections at the state and federal level. And we work with groups from all across the country of all sizes to raise visibility about the issues borrowers are facing and help address them.
Great. Well, Tom and Robin walked us through some of the different analyses for paying down debt, whether it's the highest interest loan to save money on fees or paying off the smallest overdue debt first to improve your credit score. Now we have a new analysis. What factors do savers need to consider when looking at their student loan debt?
Sure. First, I would just say that right now we are hearing from borrowers that it's a challenging time, right? It's not normal times. Even before the pandemic, there was a student debt crisis. And since the pandemic, millions more people have really been pushed to the edge. While saving is a great goal, a lot of these borrowers are just working to make ends meet, deciding whether to pay mortgage, put food on the table. So we understand that people are struggling right now and facing unique circumstances. That said, student loans have a unique repayment process. Federal loans have certain rights and protections. And saving isn't always the goal because of that as well. Many borrowers look to income-based repayment plans. Those are payment plans that are tied, your monthly payment is tied to your income. So if you face difficult times, you lose your job, you're on a furlough, your monthly payment can be reduced. There are also programs like public service loan forgiveness, where teachers, nurses, and other public service workers are working towards loan forgiveness. So just noting that savings isn't always the goal. Sometimes it's reducing your monthly payment so you can put those funds to other debts or to a rainy day fund.
Absolutely. I mean, we would say that is saving by reducing the amount of money you're paying back overall. So student loans have their own universe that people need to be looking at when they're considering paying them back. And you acknowledge that right now it is not normal times. What should savers be doing right now in light of the CARES Act and the coronavirus pandemic?
Sure. One thing that borrowers should do first is know what type of loan you have, so you know what protections apply. You can have a federal loan, a private loan. Most borrowers have both. The CARES Act was passed in March as a response to the coronavirus pandemic. It had certain protections for the vast majority of student loan borrowers, federal student loan borrowers, except for those borrowers with older federal loans that are owned by banks or private companies. So understanding what type of loan you have is really important to understand if these protections apply. The CARES Act has paused payments and provided zero interest during this payment pause time. Borrowers who have these protections do not need to make a payment until January under this plan. So first, borrowers understand what type of loan you have, understand if these protections apply. If you have a loan that is not covered, unfortunately, by these protections, but you're struggling, talk to your loan servicing company and tell them that you're having COVID-related issues, and they should let you know what kinds of plans and options they might have available. And that really can vary by state and by company. So you really do need to reach out to your loan servicing company.
And for our savers at home, we are sharing the COVID tips resources flyer sheet for folks to also see some more of those tips that Moira just walked us through. And Moira, when we're thinking about saving money on your student loans, whether it's by, paying less money overall or maximizing, as you said, some of those resources that are available for federally backed loans, what are some of the definitely do's and definitely don'ts that borrowers should be thinking about?
Sure. And of course, like everyone's circumstance are different, but I know things that borrowers are weighing right now is, should I refinance my loan? If you're in a federal loan, that you may have an option for a lower interest rate. Something to keep in mind, however, is that if you do refinance your loan, you lose these special rights and protections that federal borrowers have. Unfortunately, we are hearing from people that don't get access to the CARES Act payment pause because they did refinance their loan, or they don't get access to certain loan forgiveness programs once they have refinanced. So that should really be top of mind as borrowers are thinking of what is right for them. Also, a lot of millennials now are, actually millennials or people with children are starting to think about, helping their children fund school. Our rule of thumb is generally to max out federal student loan options. So if parents are considering this, or if students are considering this, think about your loan options. Max out federal student loans because they have additional rights and protections and repayment flexibility. Also to keep in mind is that borrowers will always have that chance to refinance after leaving school. There is a grace period for loan repayment where you can make decisions then. You can make decisions through the life cycle of your loan if refinancing is right for you. But again, rule of thumb, maxing out federal student loans before private loans. Also, private student loans is one area our organization has been focused on because we do see some of the most predatory practices in that marketplace, especially related to for-profit schools. So that's something borrowers should just be aware of, and just that they have fewer repayment options under those types of loans.
So while some federal loans might have slightly higher interest rates, for example, which we know sometimes comparing interest rates can be a good analysis for saving money. In this case, generally, federally backed student loans are much safer for the borrower because even if they do have a tiny bit higher interest rate, like you're saying right now, folks who have most of those federally backed student loans are on payment pause until January of 2021. So just wanted to underscore Moira's point there that there's a trade-off. We know from today that there's always a lot of things we can be looking at, but that might be worth it for those benefits of the slightly higher interest rate, but better protections. Moira, there's a lot of different considerations with these student loans that you've walked us through today. Do you have any suggested resources for student loan borrowers or parents or grandparents of people who are about to begin their secondary education?
Sure thing. So first, keep records of your student loan payments. we hear a lot from student borrowers, unfortunately, that have gotten the runaround. They may have been mistreated. They may have been ripped off by a company. And keeping records helps you ensure a paper trail. And also, if you're enrolling in different repayment plans, you can look back if your servicer makes an error, which we also unfortunately hear a lot about. If you are actually being mistreated, you feel like the company is not treating you fairly, you can file a complaint, and we urge borrowers to do that. You can file a complaint at the Federal Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or with your state attorney general. You can also reach out to the Student Borrower Protection Center, protectborrowers.org. We have some resources as well. We have a list of state ombudsman offices. Many states have dedicated offices with resources that advocate for borrowers. But again, you're not alone. We hear from borrowers all the time, unfortunately, and across the marketplace, we know there are problems. So if you're having problems, take action, speak up, file a complaint. Another thing is to just watch out for scams, and know that you should never pay for help with your student loan, with your federal student loan, with student loan repayment. Loan repayment and enrollment in these programs is free at the federal level. And anyone that asks you to pay money to enroll is misleading you, and you absolutely should not do that. And again, talk to your servicer if you ever have questions, especially around the CARES Act and around enrolling in the right payment program for you. And again, keep records of all of those conversations. We do have some resources on our website at protectborrowers.org, especially related to payment options during the CARES Act. There is some uncertainty around that program. There continue to be updates. Make sure that your servicer has your latest contact information. You're able to log on to the portal. Keep updated at studentaid.gov as well. Just for program updates, make sure you're getting communications as well in case things do change.
And Tom mentioned that as well, Moira, right? That it's hard to make a blanket statement about it, but generally, if someone is charging you money to help you with your debt, it's a bad sign. And that if something is free, it's usually too good to be true. But in this case today, America Saves has teamed up with Yellow Ribbon Network and AFCPE to connect all of our savers to free financial counseling and coaching. And this is a good example of not charging, so it's reliable and it's not too good to be true, even though it's free. That these are accredited professionals, and maybe these accredited professionals could help people figure out, do they have a federally backed loan if they don't know, and what protections they are eligible for, and maybe help them navigate the decision between, is refinancing right? Should they be making payments or shouldn't they if their payments are paused? A lot of the things that you've walked us through today.
Knowing what options are available, that's great.
That's really helpful. Well, thank you so much, Moira. Moira is again with the Student Borrower Protection Center, protectborrowers.org. They have a lot of great information and resources on their website. And now Moira will join our other panelists for our live question and answer. So please feel free to put questions for any of our panelists today into the comments or questions box, and we will begin to answer those. Let's move over to that.
Hi, I'm Akiva, and this is my Saver story. When I graduated from college a couple of years ago, I was facing over $92,000 of debt. I had over $80,000 worth of student loans and a $12,000 car note. I also recently got married in October of 2020, and my husband also has a large amount of student loan debt. Using the strategies that I'll share with you today, I was able to eliminate my car note in just over 3 years. And my husband and I have now devised and implemented a plan that will allow us to pay off all of our higher interest rate student loans, which equates to just over $90,000 worth of student loan debt by our 3-year anniversary. So whether you're tackling student loan repayment solo or with a partner, here are 5 tips to help you along your journey. Tip number 1 is to know what you owe. Really wrap your head around what exactly the situation is with your debt. So make a list of all of your debt, your servicer, who you owe the debt to, your current loan balance, and the interest rates on that particular debt. A good way to double check this list, just to make sure that you haven't forgot about any outstanding debts out there, is to actually check your credit report. You can get your credit report for free at annualcreditreport.com. And you can get one from each of the 3 credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, and make sure that you haven't left anything out. Step number 2 is to take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. Debt can be very stressful, even paralyzing for some people. So before you jump into making payments, understand that your debt doesn't define you and that you will get through this. Now it's time to plan. Tip number 3 is to review your repayment options. Try to lower your required payments on your debt as much as possible so that you could use any funds and resources, extra resources that you have to shovel toward the debt that you want.
Thanks so much for joining us for our town hall. We are actually running a little short on time. So rather than having our live Q&A, our panelists, Robin Sachs-Frankel from Forbes Advisor, Tom Quinn from FICO, Akiva Thomas from the News TV, and Maura Vehi from the Student Borrower Protection Center are actually on standby to help us reply to your questions on social media. So feel free to chime in, post any of your questions that you have that you need support with. And our team, along with our panelists, are on standby to answer your questions, provide any needed resources so that you feel very confident about your path forward after hearing all of the great information that you heard today. And today's town hall was filled with so much great information, which is why we're running a little short on time, because there was so much to tell you. But on behalf of the team here at America Saves, we hope that you feel empowered to make a plan to reduce your consumer debt and also your student loan debt while increasing or maintaining your credit score. Not only that, we hope that you really begin to celebrate how when you pay down your debt, you are actually saving. That is something that we truly believe here. You save so much when you're paying down your debt. So don't forget to celebrate, okay? I wanted to share a few reminders with you before we go. One, don't forget, put your questions in the comment section. We are looking on Facebook and Twitter and any other social media platform. Our team is on standby, our panelists on standby to make sure that you get the support that you need. Don't forget also to enter the Think Like a Saver sweepstakes made possible by the generous donation of Cross River. We all know that in order to enter the sweepstakes, all you have to do is share your top takeaway on the America Saves Facebook page on the live stream of this town hall within the next 24 hours, and to make sure that you've taken either the America Saves Pledge or Military Saves Pledge within the last 12 months. Now, remember, if you don't know if you've taken the pledge, just go take it, okay? There's nothing preventing you from taking the pledge more than once if you're not sure. The second thing to remind you is to take advantage of the free financial coaching and counseling that's being offered to you from our friends over at the Yellow Ribbon Network and ASCPE. I just want to pause for a moment really quickly just to share with you what a major opportunity this is, especially if you have debt and you're not sure how to navigate paying it down. You know, that's a lot of people's savings goals. It's one of the top goals that we have continually for the savers who take our pledge. So really take advantage. Think about this. If you think about any entertainer, if you think about any athlete that you really respect their talent, they didn't get there by themselves. They had a coach, they had someone teaching them, they had an advisor. Same thing with your money. Most of us weren't born knowing how to, do money or navigate our own financials. And so we actually have the opportunity to have our own free coach, free counselors, people that have been certified to do this. So don't let this opportunity pass you by, okay? To get real help from a professional. Next And final town hall is going to be November 19th. We're going to be talking all about education, home ownership, and mortgages, and retirement. And so that is our Think Like a Saver, saving for major life milestones. We will drop the link in the chat so that you can register for that. We're going to have some really great panelists, a really longer Q&A session on that one. So you'll be able to get all of your questions answered for sure there. And I'm excited to be able to support you with those three major life milestones. Also, if you're watching, if you're saving for one of those three things, drop it in the chat. If you're saving for education, if you're saving to buy a home soon, or if you're saving for your own retirement, we'd like to know. Make sure you're registered. And lastly, thank you. Thank you to you as savers, as our community for watching, but also thank you to our sponsors for our town hall today, specifically AFCPE, Daily Pay, Cross River, and the Annie Casey Foundation. Okay, we will see you right here, same time, same place, November 19th for Saving for Major Life Milestones. I'll see you then.